I'm Ariel Azor, host of Right This Way, and today we're going to talk about my take on the first debate. Now, I say that because I want you to actually watch the debate. I don't want you to listen to my thoughts on it and what I took from it. But if you've done that, or if you are absolutely not going to do that, I'm going to do my best to bring you actual quotes, what actually happened. I'm not going to pick and choose the actual words that were used. I'm going to read you direct quotes. I'm going to read you from the transcript of the debate as we talk about certain points that were made and talk about some of the things that have now made headlines as, oh, Trump said this, or, refused to say this. I'm gonna give you the truth, because unfortunately, what you hear about the next day is not the unbiased, honest truth that you hear when you actually watch with your own eyes and listen to the whole thing. It is picked apart by the media, and they choose whatever narrative they want to represent is what they're going to report on, and they're going to make the story sound however they want it to sound. Like I said, I'm not going to do that. We're going to talk about what actually happened during the debate, what was actually said, and what was left unsaid. So to start off, Chris Wallace was the moderator for this debate. There was a single moderator. I watched it on Fox, streaming it from YouTube, watching it live. And it was a little disappointing, to say the least, in my opinion at least. Honestly, pretty disappointing questions. Chris Wallace started off by saying he chose these questions. They were all his. He made them. And he did not give them to either candidate beforehand. Neither one had seen them or had any pre-existing knowledge of them, of what they said before the debate. And then they pretty much got started. The candidates walked out together and they said, don't clap. There was pretty much no one in the audience. It was all of Trump's family and then some just other random people. I don't know who. Obviously, Biden's wife was there as well. And I'm sure some Biden supporters were there. I'm sure it was probably close to half and half. Most of the questions kind of went unanswered, which obviously we see in debates all the time. Joe honestly failed to answer pretty much every question he was asked. Chris Wallace would ask a question and Joe would say, well, Trump this, and he doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's a bad guy. Orange man bad was like basically the gist of what Joe said over and over and over again all night long.
He has no plan for health care.
Of course we do.
He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has none, like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
Now, Trump, we're kind of used to Trump being a little bit of a bully and having that personality where he just sort of doesn't know when to stop. And we did see that on debate night on Tuesday. To be fair to him, though, he was basically debating Chris Wallace and Biden at the same time. So honestly, I commend him for that. The questions were unfair. The questions were just overall really not very good questions. If there's like 6 or 8 questions you have to ask two people that are potentially going to run the entire country, I feel like you would ask about something other than one of their tax returns. Just thinking about it. We'll get into that as well for sure. The first question they kind of started off with was pretty much about the Supreme Court. Are they going to fill the seat? Should they? Whatever. Pretty much what Biden said, and he's been saying this over and over again for the last couple weeks, was we should let the people choose. We should let them decide. That's why we have to wait till after the election. But I don't know if Joe doesn't understand the election process, but the people did choose. We chose in 2016, and we chose Donald Trump because he is our president. So they got into this a lot. They've gotten into this both separately, not just at the debate, and they both pretty much brought their normal points. And his reasoning for that was pretty much just his feelings, and he said, the American people, they deserve to choose. It was just, we don't want you to. And that was really lame. So I thought that was a really good start, honestly, for Trump, because he did have actual reasoning. He did have actual facts to back up his argument, whereas Biden's was, I just feel like the people want to elect you, want to choose, and as if they didn't choose in 2016. So that was disappointing for Joe. But he was just getting started. He needed a little warm up. He hasn't been out of the basement for a while because he started just pulling numbers out of nowhere when they started talking about COVID deaths. And he was just saying, Chris Wallace agreed with him on that. So might be true, might not be. I just kind of refuse to believe what number of COVID cases we actually have, just because They've been wrong so many times, I just don't know what to believe. And kind of like I said earlier, Biden just over and over and over again, for at least the first half, just responded with, yeah, Trump has no plan. They kind of said, what would you do with COVID? What's your plan for this? And he's just like, Trump has no plan. Look at this guy. He doesn't know what he's doing. And throughout that, the first half, at least for sure, Trump continued to kind of bully Biden. Chris Wallace cut him off several times, cut Trump off several times. As usual, we saw Biden kind of throwing some random words around every once in a while. When he would get confused, he kind of began to just kind of stutter a bit towards probably the middle. He was just, like I said, just throwing around random words. It kind of seems like he has a random word generator in front of him. When he gets a little lost sometimes, he just starts with the, I did this and that. And like he really honestly starts to just say random words that don't fit together in a sentence. It's very strange. I'm sure you've seen it. We'll pull up a clip of that real quick.
It is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
One of the most notable portions I thought of the debate where Chris Wallace actually asked a good question was when he asked what both candidates would do regarding COVID if they were elected again or, into the next year. And Trump, obviously, he's kind of been saying this for a bit now that he's ready for things to open back up. And so he said, I'm going to reopen the country. He basically said, Biden wants to close this country. I want to open it. And I thought that was a good answer. He had facts with him to back up why we should reopen things, why they do need to stop being closed for the economy to recover, of course. And he brought up all of the negatives of COVID and of, the COVID response, which was lockdowns, kids not being in school, all these different things he brought up. He pointed out how Dr. Fauci began earlier in the year by saying masks are dumb, you don't need them. I'll pull a clip of that for you.
People should not be walking around with masks. You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this. Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often, there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask, and they keep touching their face.
And can you get some schmutz sort of staying inside there?
Of course. But when you think masks, you should think of healthcare providers needing them and people who are ill.
We had this complete 180 a little bit later where we said, no, masks are really good. They're super helpful. We all need them. And it was Dr. Fauci himself who had that complete epiphany that things just changed so magically. And Trump was just pointing that out. He was just saying, look, this is kind of ridiculous at this point. We were trying to do what was best for the people at the beginning. We didn't know what COVID would look like, what effect it would look like once it came to America. We did not know what it would do. And now we do. And now it's time to get back to normal for things to open back up. And I thought that was a pretty important point because Biden, he got up there and said Trump did this to the economy and he hurt the economy and he didn't respond to COVID fast enough. Even though when Trump did originally respond by shutting down borders, he said he was xenophobic and he said all of these things that Trump was racist and he was stupid for doing that. Yet here we are now, a couple months later, and he didn't respond fast enough. Oh, okay. Well, either way, Joe, you have it either way. Because you still don't know what you're talking about. You still don't know where you are. So we're just as confused as you are because masks didn't work then. And then all of a sudden they do work now? Yeah, same reasoning, really. So what does it matter if you're a Democrat? Trump pointed that out, actually, that all these states that are still closed down, that are still seeing the worst effects on the economy and on local businesses of COVID are Democrat states run by Democratic governors. Then when it's Biden's turn to respond, he literally goes almost the entire time talking about Trump.
The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and we were insisting that the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan.
Well,
I laid out
Sir,
back
it's
in
just 2 minutes.
March exactly
So-
what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools. It cost a lot of money.
The question was, what are you going to do once you take office? Biden spent almost his entire 2 minutes of responding to the question by saying, Trump is this. Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have any idea how to respond to a virus like this. I do. And pretty much that was the only time he mentioned himself or what he did know or would do was, I know what to do. But he didn't actually share what his plan was. He just said Trump didn't have a plan and he did. That's really, really promising. I feel really good knowing that. And I feel just really confident in that. So that's good. Thank you for that, Joe. Good response. We got to a really good point once Wallace started asking about law enforcement, and it sort of ended up in Trump saying, you know, I've got supportive law enforcement behind me. Of course I want law and order back. Of course I think that we need police officers. And then Biden's chance to respond, he was kind of like, oh yeah, like I support law enforcement too. And he was kind of lost. And Trump was like, and Trump interrupted him and he said, what group of law enforcement do you have backing you? Name one. We have time. I'll wait. Biden goes, no, we don't have time. We don't have time for anything. And that was really kind of ominous and hilarious at the same time. But that was his response because he couldn't name a single one. And he knew immediately that he couldn't name a single one. No law enforcement is going to back a member of the exact party that wants to completely shut them down and take away all of their jobs. Nobody's going to back them. And just because Biden didn't get up there and say, I want to defund police, they need to go, doesn't mean he isn't part of the Democratic Party that does. He's running as a Democrat. He's going to be president if he wins, a Democratic president. So it just doesn't make sense. Nobody's going to support him. That's completely understandable. Chris Wallace butted in there because, like I said earlier, he was pretty much participating in the debate as well as a debater at some points. And he kind of just was like, okay, time to move on.
He doesn't have any law
Well, you
support.
look,
He has no law enforcement
that's not
support.
true.
Almost
That's
nothing.
look,
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go
Look,
ahead.
look.
Think. We have time.
we don't have time to do
No,
anything.
think
except
about
to
it.
say- Look,
Name
folks,
one law enforcement group that
Well,
came out and
I think,
supported
gentlemen,
you.
I think I'm going to take back the
There aren't.
moderator's
I don't
role,
think there
and
are any.
I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many.
One thing that I saw after the fact in the last few days that I was most bothered by was that everybody's saying Trump refused to condemn white supremacists and that he wouldn't say that. Now, to start off, Chris Wallace, stupid waste of question again, stupid waste of question because you were trying to get somebody to look bad. And, you know, he asked about this. He said, President Trump, will you condemn white supremacists? Will you say that these people condemn them? And will you condemn these people? And Trump was like, who? You know, you have to tell me who I'm condemning because you can't just say white supremacists. Like, his point was, of course, who doesn't? Like, who are you talking about specifically? I'm going to read you the actual transcripts of what went down. Wallace asked Trump, are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups? Trump says, sure. Wallace says, and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland. Trump says, sure, I'm prepared to do it, but I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing. I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace. Wallace says, then do it, sir. Biden says, do it. Say it. Trump responds, what do you want to call them? Give me a name. Wallace says, white supremacists and right-wing militias. Biden says, Proud Boys. Trump says, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what, somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left. Does it sound like Trump refusing to condemn white supremacists? Does it sound like he's a racist who can go on TV and say white supremacy is okay? Of course not. He condemned him right there. He just did. He just want to know who he's condemning, specifically make it out there known who he is saying, yeah, I don't agree with this, because he knows, and he's experienced this for the last couple years, that the media spins absolutely anything and everything he says however they want to spin it. He's just being cautious. And the media still spun it anyway. They still said he refused to condemn white supremacists. No, he didn't. He said it right there. After that, we did get into Trump again with a more personal attack on Biden. He said that Hunter was dishonorably discharged for cocaine use. And Biden was like, no, that isn't true. That's absolutely not true. I looked it up. It's 100% true. So I don't know what he was saying wasn't true. Needless to say, it's the same thing we see over and over again with Trump versus Biden. Trump actually knows facts. He actually knows what he's talking about. Joe very, very easily gets super flustered and just says whatever thought comes into his head. That's not true. Of course it's true. There's proof right here. The thing about him being dishonorably discharged for cocaine use is 100% true. And 100%, like, there's no way to not prove that. It happened. It's a fact. But Biden says, no, that's absolutely not true. But we see this over and over and over again. Does this man have what it takes to be president? Let's not even think about policies for a second. Let's put those aside. Trump suggested they drug test. Before the debate, he said he would totally do it. Biden said no. Trump suggested that they do an earpiece check. Biden again said no. And you could say Trump's just saying this stuff to make him look bad. But if that's true, wouldn't Biden just agree? Why would you not agree? He agreed in 2016. He agreed to do an earpiece check. So why not in 2020? If you're not wearing an earpiece, why wouldn't you agree to a check? The only reason to do that is if you don't want someone to find the earpiece in your ear. So I think that was pretty sketchy, obviously, but again, we can't prove it. But looking at all of those things, it kind of makes me wonder, no matter what you saw during the debate, just those basic facts, do you really think this man can be president? And if you do, okay, hey, let's get into the facts after that question then, because that is what's more important. Well, that is probably equally important. I mean, I don't think more important, because if he's incapable of being president, his policies do not matter, because somebody else is just going to take his place, and their policies definitely matter. So we'll get into that when we see the VP debate next week. I'm excited for that one. I think obviously Pence has a very different debating style from Trump, but I think that he's going to absolutely destroy Kamala. I'm excited to see that. We will definitely do an episode on that as well. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy this episode, you can give me a thumbs up on YouTube. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and you can also check out my Instagram at right.this.way.